I want to demo the client server command protocol example that I just uploaded. This is for my IT 129 Python scripting class at Marymount University. Okay, so first off, let me run it, and you can see what it's doing. So this is based on the Echo server. I'll get this window out of the way. This is based on the simple Echo server example, but expanded in a couple different ways. So let me just run it. So source/server. Remember, we're going to always crank up the server first. Main. Oops. Let me just make sure I'm in the right directory. Okay. Python 3, source, server, main.py. And the main is, or the server is listening on port. Now, there is no address here because it's listening on every address. That was one of the changes. And when I crank up the code in Visual Studio Code, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Originally, if you look at the simple Echo server code, you'll see that it's only listening on port, or not, on IP address 127.0.0.1, which is the local host. You know, if you're only going to connect, test locally, that's fine, right? But generally speaking, you want to have applications on another computer, like the client can run on different computers and connect to your computer if that port's open, if you're allowing incoming connections, right? That's one thing you'll have to check before you can do that type of testing. But anyway, that's the reason why you don't see any address here. So now it's waiting for an incoming connection, so I'm going to crank up the client, one of the clients, Python 3, source, client, main. Okay, so now we got a connection. So it still performs the Echo server function. Okay, so now the client is still connecting to 127.0.0.1, and the server is listening on 127.0.0.1 plus whatever other IP address is assigned to this particular host. Okay. So if you just typed in a message, right, like hello world, then the server is going to get that string, right, and print it to the console, as is shown in this left-hand terminal. And then down here on the right-hand, on the bottom, you see that it actually returns a JSON string, right, with the command that was sent, which in this case is the default echo. Right. In other words, I'm not sending a particular command. I'm just sending a string. And the way, when we look at the server code, if the string that you send to the server does not, match one of the commands that the server is going to, coded to handle, then it's just going to send whatever you send it back to the client. That's how this thing is working, right? However, the difference is I'm sending it back in a JSON string, and I'm just printing out the raw JSON. You could do whatever you want, right? You could take the JSON string, convert it to a dictionary, and extract the, just the result and print hello world. And I'll do that to show you what I'm talking about when I launch the code in Visual Studio Code. So now one of the commands that the server recognizes is one that I called sysinfo, right? And if you type sysinfo, it gives you like all this stuff like machine equals the x86-64, RIX Mac Pro is the name of the machine, Mac OS 10.14.6 x86, i386 64-bit, the processor is i386, Python version 3.10.9. Okay. Now, if you go to the repository, now the reason I want to go here is to show you like there's instructions in the README file, right? So I'm going to GitHub/pulpfreepress, and it's the Python IT 129 Python scripting repository. It's the client server command protocol project, and the README will show you like how this differs from the simple Echo server, right? So how to run the application. And here's the list of example commands, right? The simple Echo server already responded to the shutdown server command, right? But this one executes the following additional commands. So you can see kind of like what I'm asking you to do for project 2, right? So one of the commands is sysinfo, which is in this table. The other one is random, and the other one is motivation. So random will just request a random number from the server. The server will generate a random number and send it back to you. Sysinfo uses the platform library to grab, to ask the computer that it's running on, the host, hey, give me some information about yourself. Put that into a dictionary, convert that dictionary to JSON, and then send that JSON string back to the client. Motivation will request the server to give you a motivational phrase or a statement, right, to kind of get you more excited about learning how to program or just cheer you up, right? So I just dreamed these up. I went to get my car service this morning, right? Oil change, safety inspection. Currently, today, as I write this, is the 19th of April, 2023, right? So while I'm sitting in there, I'm like, all right, let me just write this stuff up. And these are the commands that I came up with, right? So I don't want these commands to like limit your creativity, right? This is just 3 that I came up with. So what you need to do for this project is you need to implement at least 3 additional commands, right? So I've got 3, actually 4 with the shutdown server, but 3 that I'm going to demonstrate here, and I'll go through how they work. And then you can kind of glean from that, like, oh, I see what's going on here, and then come up with your own. So think up some more commands of your own and implement them in a similar fashion. However, don't let, like I said before, what I did limit your creativity, okay? So study the following libraries for ideas of what you can do. And this is just like 3, right? You could study anything you wanted. OS, platform, and requests. And with the requests, right, you could go out to a website, grab some information, and send it back to the client, right? And there's so many different things you can do, right? I don't want to limit your, like I say, your creativity, right? Whatever you can dream of. It could be simple, it could be complex, it could be whatever. But however, I guess the one underlying thing is encode that data into JSON before returning it to the client. Okay, so there's JSON. The only thing that's not being encoded in JSON technically, and I could do it, is the actual command itself. In other words, the commands are just being sent from the client to the server as strings, right? Then they get decoded from UTF-8, and then they get executed. So this is the README file, and it kind of goes through like how to run it and the commands that it does. So let's do these other commands. So of course, this is a multi-server, right? So I can say Python 3 up here at the top terminal. Now I can close this. Bonk. Python 3 source client main. All right, now I have another server connected to it, and I'm going to send sysinfo sysinfo. If I mistype that command syinfo like I was getting ready to do, right, it's just going to echo that back to me because it doesn't recognize it as a valid command. Random, it'll recognize random, and it sends me back a random number, right? If I do that again, whoops, there is no up arrow here, so random. There's another random number. So the first one was 683, 127. This is, I think, the way I coded it up, as I recall, between 0 and 1,000, right? Or 0 and 100. Nope, 0 and 1,000, obviously, right? Random. And that's pretty fun, right? So the other one then is motivation. You are awesome. Oh, thanks. I feel pretty good now, right? Motivation. Oh, you're doing great. Let me see how I'm doing on this terminal. This is a whole nother person down here, right? I'll keep it up. You're doing amazing work. Thank you. All right, great. And you guys are going to feel awesome too when you figure this stuff out. All right. All right, so let's go through the code, right? So I'm going to pull up another terminal. Let me bump back over this way. And then let me go cd dev, right? We're all organizing our code the same way. Well, you should be. CD IT-129 dir. All right. So I want to do code. By now, you guys should be able to launch Visual Studio Code from the command line. Code, client server protocol, and, you know, next thing you know, bada bing, bada boom, you're smoking cigarettes. Okay, coming up with Visual Studio Code. All right, so let me make this bigger, right? Let me make the font size bigger. It's working, finally, it's coming. That should be big enough. All right. So, let's start. I haven't changed I made changes to the client.py. I made changes to the main.py for the server. Okay, so let's go over that one first. All right. All I did was, here's the comment. Originally, this was 127, I'm sorry, it's a string, right? So 127.0.0.1, that's what's in the simple echo server. But this is just, I took out that address and I just put these two single quotes, right? And it says, listen on all available IP addresses assigned to the host. So we could, you know, we could run this in class. I could crank up my server. Someone else could crank up the client for this project, and I could give you the IP address of my laptop, and you should be able to connect and send commands to it, right? Or do echo server. And as many students are in the class, that's how many connections that server will handle. All right, so I'm going to just save that again, and then I'm going to close the main. That's the only change I made to the server's main.py. Let's go over the server's changes first. And, you know, it's a few, but it's not that much, right? Structurally, this code looks very similar to the echo or simple echo server, except for there's more, it does more things. So let's just go through there, right? So let me make it just a little bit bigger so you can see it. You know, I know you guys like to watch this crap on your iPhones, right? So let me make it iPhone sized. Okay. So obviously, I was importing socket and threading, and now I'm importing sys platform. I think I was doing sys before for the exit, but now I'm importing platform, OS, random, and JSON. Okay. So those are built-in Python packages. All right. Now for the constructor method, or the dunder init, right, for the server class, this code, that's the same. This is different. So here I'm initializing a motivational message list. It's just a list, right? And then I call self dot underscore initialize motivational message list. This is a method that I created in order to populate this list with motivational messages. So while I'm talking about this, let me go ahead and just scroll down to that function, or to that method. And here it is on line 111, underscore initialize motivational message list. Obviously, it's a method. It takes a self as the first argument, and self dot underscore motivational message list dot append. So I just added 5 motivational messages, right, to the list. You're doing great. The reason I had to do this backslash is because I'm using single quotes for these strings, and that's how you escape another single quote, right? So your is an abbreviation. So the single quote. Now, if I would have done it this way, right, just as a review, if I would have used double quotes, I wouldn't have had to do this. I could have, but I wouldn't have had to, because now I'm using a single quote inside of double quotes, and that'll work hinky-dinky, right? But that's not the way I was doing it. I was doing it this way. There we go. Get rid of that one. Okay. So save, and then the next one is keep up the amazing work. You are awesome. Let nothing stand in your way. And today you may struggle, but tomorrow you will succeed. Isn't that every one of us right there, right? Okay, so then once we get that stuff, I could have done this. I could have, the order is important here, right? If I would have called the listen IP address and port, like originally, let me just Control X out of here. Let me just delete those lines, right? This is what is originally in the client echo server. If you were to naively, right? So in other words, we set the IP, self.ip to the incoming IP address. We set, that's a string coming in. And then we set the port to the incoming port. And the original echo server started to listen, and then next thing it calls is the accept connection. If you were to put these methods here, you would have a hard time, right? Because this stuff is never going to execute. I'm listening for incoming connections, right? Accept connections. This method right here it just blocks, right? It just always continuously accepts connections, right? So none of this stuff ever executes. So order is important here. The other thing I could have done here is move these, taking these new methods and stuck them up here like that, right? Because, self.ip and port doesn't have anything to do, has nothing to do with the motivational message list. All right, so this is new for this particular version, right? So I'm creating the list as an attribute of the class server itself, and then initializing it in the initialize down here. And then I'll show you what happens when we actually need to use it in the code. All right. So then once we do all this, we start listening. That's the same as the simple echo server, and then accept connection. That's the same, except for the body of that method is different. There's no changes to the listen for incoming connections from what was done. Okay. And just a review, if os.name equals nt, this is required because if you try to do this line in Windows, it'll throw an error because the socket does not contain a definition for SO_reuse port. All right, so that's why I had to make this modification in the simple echo server. Okay, so this listen method has not changed from the simple echo server. The accept connection, it has changed, right? So it looks very similar, except for, let me scroll over here. Okay. Well, let me scroll back and start at the top. So accept connection, right here. Accepts an incoming connection. So try with self.server while true. That's why that method never stops running, right? It just goes while true. Client server equals self.server accept. And then in order to pass, because all this client and server communication is being handled in a separate thread of execution. We talked about threading in class the other night. I pass in arguments, right? So I'm passing in one more argument to the thread, and that is self.motivational message list, right? So I'm passing in a list so that the separate thread has access to that object, right? And then that's the only change for the accept connection. And then we come down here to process client requests. This is where all the big changes take place along with the additional methods that I created. So let's just run through here. I changed the name of, this was request. I changed that to raw request because this used to be message, right? You can take a look at the simple echo server and see the changes, right? I left this value alone. That's still 1024 because we're just sending simple strings to the server. Okay. And then it takes the raw request and decodes it. And then that makes that the request. That request variable then is printed to the console, right? Or the terminal. And then we match the request in this match statement, and then case shutdown server, server.close, and then break, right? So server.close, and then execute the break statement, and then that will shut down the server and the client, right? Everything gets shut down. And then we have the case random, right? So this, I added this break statement for this particular version because I am handling the default case where I wasn't. I was just doing it as a matter of executing this method for the echo, right? But I moved the echo response into the default case of this match statement. So that's why I needed this break here. All right, so when you send a command to the server, which is just any old string, if it matches any of these, shutdown server, random, sysinfo, motivation, then it will do these. Otherwise, it does the default case, which is just echo the request back to the server. That's how the echo functionality is still maintained. In case random, right, then the response equals self._random. So we're calling a random method here. And then we're then taking that response, packaging, converting it to a byte array, and then using the client object to send it, right? And this is all the same for each of these cases here, right? And then this is the response is a little different. The response is always a JSON string, but each method, random, sysinfo, motivation. I should have actually, here I used an underscore, right? I should have used an underscore there. I didn't do that. I can change that right now, right? And then I'll post those. I'll just go ahead and push these changes back up to the repo. Right, so I'm going to use underscore random, underscore sysinfo, underscore motivation, right? And then I'll have to come down here and go underscore sysinfo, underscore motivation, because these aren't really public methods, right? They're just, and that's it, all right? Save. Okay, now that I've made those changes, I'll shut down the server. No, I'll just leave it running. Nothing's really changed. Okay. All right, so let's just walk through this stuff, right? So if you type random in the client, let's just do this. Random, right? Boom. I get a random number. Here's how it's doing it. The message comes in, or the request comes in, the raw request, right? Client.receive. Actually, let's see here. Yeah, process. So while client is true, raw request. So this blocks, right, until you get a request comes in. Client receive. If there's nothing in there, then it breaks, right? Then we take that raw request and convert it or decode it into a request. Then we print that request to the server. So let's do that one more time, and we'll watch that print request over here. So I'm going to say random. Look at this left-hand screen when I do that, or the terminal, and you see it printed random. So now there's two randoms over here, right? That is this line of code right there. Okay, then we enter the match statement. Case shutdown server, it wasn't shutdown server, so that did not execute. Case random, okay, so that was the matching string. So we executed self._random. So let's go down to self._random, right? And here it is. I should have did the same thing with echo. Echo, I'm going to do self.echo. Okay. So random. And a point of note here, right? I should have done this before. This echo method, I kind of like methods to kind of be in the order in which they appear, like in the code, right, defined. So I'll come down here past, there we go, I'll put echo down here. All right, so now we've got random, sysinfo, motivation, right, and those are kind of that's the way they appear in the case, right, in the match statement. So case random, execute the self._random method and assign that result to the response. Okay. So we go to the random, and you see the first thing we do is, and I'll add some comments here, we define a dictionary. the next thing we do is we add, I added, this is what I'm doing. This is just the way I did it. I added a key to store the command. I would say to store the executed command. All right. So in other words, what command was executed, right? And then I create another. So this is just a key, right? So I create the dictionary, and then I'm saying, hey, in the command use the command key to store the name of the command that was actually executed. So in this case, it's random, right? In the results, create another key called results, and then actually put the random number in the results. And we'll see this when we run it on the client side. And of course, this random is from the random library. So we come up here, I'm importing random, right? And so I create a random int between 0 and 1,000. And then once I have that, then I can take my dictionary and I can use JSON and the dump-s, JSON.dump-s. Think of dump-s as, you can say dictionary to string, right? Dump-s. It is, if you're new to JSON and converting from dictionary to JSON, the dump-s and the load-s commands can get pretty, like you can get confused as which one is which. But the dump-s takes a dictionary and converts it to JSON. All right. The opposite, load-s, takes a dictionary and converts it to JSON. Right. I'm sorry. Takes a JSON string and populates a dictionary with the JSON string. That's the load-s. So load a string into a dictionary is load-s. Take a dictionary, convert it to a JSON string is dump-s. Right. You just have to say that to yourself about 1,000 times, and then you'll remember. All right, and that's what it's returning. It's returning the JSON, this dictionary converted to JSON. So we go back up here to random, and then we take that response, which is now a JSON string. That's really just a string, right? JSON string is just a string. We're going to convert that string to a byte array, encode it in UTF-8, and we're going to send that to the client. Okay, so let's do random one more time. And we see that the result is the command that was sent to the server is random, and the result of that command is the integer 301, right? Now, let's run sysinfo, right? Same with sysinfo. So the command is sys by sysinfo. Then I hit that. This sysinfo case it matches now. I call this self._sysinfo method, and then it populates. It returns a JSON string to populate that response. So let's go take a look at sysinfo. It's a little bit more involved. Same thing, create a dictionary, and then populate the command key with, these are keys, command, results, 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 those are keys. And then populate the command, right, key with, that's the value that key references, right? So dictionaries are key values, right? So this key will retrieve this string, and that string is sysinfo. That was the command that's being executed. Now for the results, I'm creating another dictionary to hold a set of complex results, right? So within the results is a dictionary, and now I'm creating keys within that dictionary, right? So machine, and if you look at the platform library, platform.machine, which is a method, right? It tells you what it returns, right? And then if you look at node, node returns the network name. Platform returns quite a lot of information. Processor returns the processor type, right? That's the platform.processor method, and platform Python version returns Python version. Note how I named that particular JSON field, Python_version, right? I haven't really got into like formal JSON naming, but after working at a cybersecurity company, and we were doing a lot of JSON processing, trust me, there's a right way and a wrong way to name JSON, especially if you want it to work in AWS, Glue, and have it seamlessly work, right? If you put a lot of underscores in your JSON, you're just asking for trouble. Okay, then we just take that dictionary and convert it to JSON, return that JSON, and send that result. So we go up here and we type, well, we type sysinfo. We'll do it one more time. And that's the JSON string. The command was sysinfo. The results are, again, another dictionary. You can tell because that there's a dictionary within a dictionary, or, right? This is a JSON string that's just rawly, dumped to the console, right? But that's how it looks, right? When you convert a dictionary that contains a dictionary. All right, so machine, x86 node, RIX Mac Pro, we already went over all this. And then the same thing for motivation. Now, motivation, I want to go through it just to kind of show you how it works, and then I'll be done with this video. Motivation, when you type motivation, right, you get a pithy little motivational statement, right? Let nothing stand in your way. Of course, you want to hear that, right? Like, yeah, hell yeah, man, nothing standing in my way. All right, so then you come down here to motivation, right? That's the method that gets executed. And you notice I'm sending in the motivational, the message list. Okay. And then what I do is I calculate this max list items. I don't care. Like, what I'm trying to do is a little bit of writing my code so that if I add, for example, if I added, let me just do that, right? So if I add another method here, let me show you how it works, and then I'll append another method or another pithy success message to the list, right? So here I have max list items equals length, right? The len, that's a built-in Python method, gives you the length. That gives you the number of items. So the number of items in this list are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. However, lists are indexed between 0 and the number of items minus 1, right? So max list items, I should have said max list index or something like that, right? I could change it, right? Max list index. That would make more sense. And then come over here and say max list index. I-N. I learned how to spell. Okay, max list index. Max list, you got to say that 15 times fast. So you take this is the message list, right? So it's coming in as an argument. So we go back up here to there's where we're passing in the message list. If you come up here, we're passing in that message list to the underscore process clients requests, which is the target of the thread, right? So when this thread gets kicked off, when I create the thread, I say client handler equals threading dot thread, target equals self, client process client requests, and then I pass in the client, the self.server, and self.underscore motivational message list, right? That's because the thread needs access to those things, right? The separate thread's not going to be able to reach back into the class and access stuff. All right. So continuing on. All right. So now that we have the max index, right, we can say, hey, generate a random number between 0 and the max list index, right? Max list index. So it'll generate a random number between 0 and 4. And then I create the dictionary. I say what command was executed, and then I give the results here. So I say a message list. And here all I'm doing is just accessing or getting one of those motivational messages, just any random one between 0 and 4. That's what that random index is doing. And I take that dictionary, convert it to JSON, and send it back to the client, right? And that is, so let's do that one more time. Oops. Motivation. You're doing great. Thanks. I needed to hear that right now. Okay. Now let's go ahead and add another line, right? So I'm just going to I'll copy a short one. This one right here. I don't want to have to go in and actually say, oh, now I have 5, or now I have 4, or now I have 6, right? So because I calculate the length dynamically, I can just go ahead and add another motivational statement. You look marvelous. Okay. Save that. Now I'm gonna have to restart the server, and I'll restart these clients. So I'll just shut down that one. We don't need both of them going. Quit. And I'll just do, well, I already quit, so I'll just Control C out of this one here. All right, so run the server, run the client. And now if I do motivation, you are awesome. Let's do motivation. Keep up the amazing work. I'm down here at the bottom. You are awesome. They seem to be clustered here. Keep up the amazing work. You are awesome. Man, I'm on a loop. Like 1, 2, 3. I don't know what these are. So motivation. Let nothing stand in your way. Finding something different. You look. There we go. You look marvelous. There's the new one. Okay. Of course, you could have I could have programmed this server to like load. Take. And here's something, right? You could totally do this, right? So I could say, hey, add another message, right, to the motivational dictionary. Right? That could totally be a command that you could send to the server, right? In fact, if you guys, any of you figure out how to do that, I don't generally give extra credit, but I think I might consider doing it if you could figure that one out, right? So you have to think of a command, right? And then the string to add. So it would be a little complicated, right? Because you'd send a command to the server would have to say, oh, this is the add motivational message command, and then the second string, or the command might have 2 parts, string A, string B. String A would be the command, string B would be like the message you wanted to add, right? Just, that's another idea. So of course we always have the shutdown server command, and then everything exits out. Okay, so that is the client server command protocol. I will, while I'm thinking about it right here, I'm just going to say git status, git add everything, git commitment it. I'm going to say worked server code, and then git push. All right, so now you can go update yourselves to the latest copy of this repo. And if you have any questions, always reach out to me. I'm here to serve. Have a great day. You thought I forgot, didn't you? Okay, let's take a look at the client code. I'll shut down the server window and go to the client. All right. So we're importing socket and JSON. That's really all we need. So there's no real change. Yeah, no, there's no real change to the server, because the client just simply, you type in a string, it sends a string to the server, and the server sends back a JSON string, right? However, what I want to show you is that I did change this from response to raw response to make it orthogonal with the server code, right? So you can see what's going on. I also upped this to 2048 just in case the payloads coming back from the server were a little bit bigger. And then I just decoded that string, and then I print that response, right? So what I want to do is not just print the raw JSON. I'll go ahead and leave that in there, but what I want to do is yeah, I think I'll get rid of that. I'll just comment this out, right? I'll leave server response, But what I'll do is, instead of printing the response, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write the comments first of what I want to do. And that is, I'm going to convert the JSON to a dictionary. Okay. Access the results key. Right, and just print that stuff out, right? So in other words, the JSON comes back from the server with the command that was executed and the results of that command. So what I'll do is I'll just access the command key and the results key. Like that. So the very first thing we do is, well, okay, so we've got this response, right? That is the JSON string. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to create a dictionary. Dictionary. Well, hang on. I'll say, what do I want to name it? I'll just say response dictionary. No, I'll just say dictionary. Right? Equals JSON dot load-s, right? JSON load-s response. Okay, now we have that dictionary. So now what we can do here is we can sit here and do, instead of saying print server response, I am going to comment that out. I'm going to say, I always love programming live, right? So I'll say print, I'll use an F string. F server command, and then dictionary, command, dictionary. Okay, I think the issue here is these. Let's do this. Okay, that's better. Whenever you have mixing these single quotes and the double quotes, I guess I could do it like this. That's probably better way to do it. And then come back here like that. There we go. Okay. So I want to print out. So what this is going to do is going to say it's going to access the command, the value of that key. So the command, right? And so we'll say server command, and then print F, double quote, server response, server result. I'll just say result. Maybe I'll just say command result. Results. I'm going to have to go back to the server code to see what I called that key. Results. Okay. Thank you. Okay, go back to the client. Boom, right here. Let me just close this down. I guess if I click there, it closes. There we go. All right. So results, except it's, okay, results. And then dictionary, square bracket, results. All right. Now, still some of this stuff may look like JSON. Well, actually, it'll be a dictionary. It won't be JSON at this point. Okay, so now let's just run this and see what happens, right? So let me choke that up a little bit. So let's go here, and not that one. There's another window. Over here, let me minimize this, and I'll get rid of, I'll just move this over here. Okay, let me make this window a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, now let's crank up the server. So Python 3, oops, source/server main. Okay, waiting for incoming connections. Python 3 source/client main. All right, so now let's just do hello world. This is just going to be the default echo. All right. Okay, process default. Okay, problem processing server response results. Okay. So let's do this. Let's go back to the Visual Studio Code. Okay, so problem processing server response, and that comes from here, right? That's that exception, process server response. Okay, I did some exploring. So here is the issue, right? This is where you have to be consistent in your naming, right? This is a total newbie freaking issue, right? So I come down here to the, so if you notice in a random, the keys results, but when I get to the echo function, it's result, right? So results. So let me restart the server. So Control C. And restart that server. And come over here and restart this client. Okay, now when I hit hello world, there we go. So command is de facto echo and results hello world. Okay. So let's shut down the server code there. I mean, okay. So here's what I've done, right? So this is the client. Originally, I was just printing the response, right, to the terminal in the client. But what I'm doing now is I'm actually taking that response and I'm using JSON load_s to populate a dictionary, okay? And then I'm taking the dictionary, and this is where having consistency between your server and your client, right, or your server naming, right, of what's coming back. You're the developer, you should know this, right? And if you're not the developer, then someone who is writing the server should say, here's what's coming back from these commands, right? It's going to be a dictionary with, or it's going to be a JSON string with, you know, these are the fields in the JSON string, or these are the keys, right? Because JSON is key value pairs, right? Just like a dictionary. All right, so I take this JSON response, I convert it to a dictionary, or I populate it to a dictionary. And then I'm just, you know, say print with a F string command, and then I just access the commands key, and whatever that command was, that's the value that appears there, and then the results, right? And the results could be complex. So let's go ahead and say sysinfo, right? That's going to be a complex. And you'll see that the results will look like a dictionary, right? Because it is a dictionary. You could further say, oh, if the command was sysinfo, then, you know, you could go in here and parse, or you could write code. I'm not going to do it here, right? I'll leave it as a exercise for you guys. You could write just a code that just says, hey, here's a dictionary for all the keys in the dictionary, right? Print out the values for each of the key, print the key and the value, key and the value, key and the value, right? And there's plenty of examples of that on YouTube as well. Okay, that's it. So that's how you take a JSON string, convert it to a dictionary, and then access the fields in that dictionary, or the keys in that dictionary. All right, and that's it for this video. Have a good day.